This is episode 93 of the Death to Tyrants podcast.
The crushing weight of the tyrant's passage had left nothing unmarked.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquids, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
What's up? What is up? What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Death to Tyrants podcast. As always, I'm your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, still coming to you out of Austin, Texas. And today, it's a nice, relaxing, fun chat. I got Peter Quinones on the show to talk about all kinds of stuff. I know you guys know who he is, the host of the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast, and of course, managing editor of the Libertarian Institute. The reason I brought him on, besides just to have a nice chat with a fellow libertarian podcaster, I wanted to talk to him about his podcast, how it started, his kind of journey through libertarianism, and of course about this documentary. I'm stoked that it's going to be out much sooner than I thought it was going to. The state of the current Libertarian Party, and we actually get into all kinds of fun stuff. Pete's on here and he gets to vent because just like you, just like me, a lot of libertarians can piss him off. And so I kind of allow him a little vent session here, and I think you guys are going to enjoy that. And I kind of told you what he does already, but let's bring him in with an official introduction. Peter Quinones is managing editor of the Libertarian Institute, and he hosts the excellent Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. He's here with us today on Death to Tyrants. Pete, welcome to the show.
Buck, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm stoked to have you here on this platform. This time we did one where I was on yours a few months back, so I'm glad to have you on here because I got a lot of feedback from being on yours, so I want to return the favor, so I'm glad you're here.
Happy to be here. Talk about anything you want.
All right. Well, I want to start by complimenting you on your podcast, not only the content, but I myself get a lot of messages saying, man, your intro music, Buck, is so good. Who is that? But I've got to say, I think you've got me topped. Your intro music's my favorite of any podcast out there. Who is that?
Yeah, so they're a band from South Florida called Shorty. They've broken up now a while, and it's a couple brothers, and they just wrote this song, Freedom, and John, the singer the guitar player who wrote the song, has become a friend of mine since, and he just offered me the intro music. So I was like, well, it's better than the intro music that I was using, which was my intro music from music that I wrote 25 years ago. And I'm like, sure. And people like it a lot more than my music. Not jealous. Not jealous at all.
Right.
And I get a lot of compliments on it. So I always want to thank John and Joe for letting me use that song because it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And unlike myself, that's cool that you actually got permission to use the music. How many episodes are you up to now?
I think this morning at midnight, I released number 376.
Nice. Okay. What year did you start doing this?
It was July of 2017. That was my first episode I recorded. I started by doing them once a week, and I was only putting them on YouTube for the first 7 or 8 episodes. And then I got a platform that would, put it on iTunes and everything. Not Libsyn, which I eventually went to and what I'm on now, but it was another platform. And and then, just started trying to grow it out from there and see, watched it grow and slowly. It's funny on podcasts, everything stays static for a while and then you have a leap.
Yeah.
And it's like, you jump up a bunch of downloads and then you stay static for a while and you have a leap. And I had a leap about a month ago, and now I'm waiting for the next ones to roll in and see what happens.
Yep. I know that feeling well. When you first started the podcast, was your vision different for it than what it's turned into? Has it changed over the years?
Well, yes, because, and I've talked about this a few times, when I first started it, I knew what I wanted the first 15 episodes to be about. I knew I wanted them to be about 15 to 20 minutes long and just really concentrate on fundamentals. First episode was about the cops, and talking about how they have, went over a couple of the court cases where they have no mandate to protect us and everything. They're just there to protect the public, and that ain't you. And I just went through and talked about everything from talked about the real Antifa, the history of anti-fascism in Italy and places like that, and talked about guns and talked about jury nullification. And by the time I got to the 15th episode, I actually talked to Vin Armani, and he was like, memes are really powerful. Why don't you can do short episodes about certain memes and stuff like that, and the messages that come off of them. And I did that a couple times, and then I just started contacting people to do interviews, and contacted a few people, and they said yes, and then I just jumped off from there. And pretty much now, it's very rare that I release the solo episode where I talk about something. Usually it's going to have to be something that's really important that I really want to talk about. But I just really like to get interesting people on to talk about things that I don't know so that I can get information. Or like when I had you on, there was some stuff I wanted to talk about, but I didn't really want to talk about myself. I wanted to have, you're going to have different thoughts on it than I do. So, be able to have two people putting information in there and having ideas about what's going on, I think it just makes for a better episode sometimes.
Let me ask you this, what's been a topic you've covered that you've received the most pushback on?
Abortion.
Okay.
Yeah, that one is always fun. I did an episode with Dr. Sean Baker, who famously of the carnivore diet. Yeah. And, my diet is roughly 85 to 90% animal flesh. And there is a segment of libertarianism out there that has adopted veganism. Just yesterday, or I think it was Monday, Mark Clare of Lions of Liberty had Anthony Samroff on, who's a friend of mine, and I was just hanging out with in New York last month. And he's a vegetarian, and he's very much against libertarians eating meat from a cruelty perspective and everything like that. So every once in a while, I'll get attacked for that. Or I had Keith Preston on, who is been an anarchist for over 30 years, started off as a violent leftist anarchist, and has graduated, has grown. Yes. And he'll talk to anybody. He'll talk to left anarchists. He'll talk to national anarchists, which is a more European kind of anarchism, which is more blood and soil kind of thing. So he'll talk to them, and he'll talk to anybody who wants to smash the state. So first time I had him on, of course, some left libertarians attacked because, you're having this guy who promotes Nazi values on there and everything like that. And I'm like, slow down, man. There's a lot of articles written about Keith online by, friggin' feminist anarchists who are like, I thought he was this Nazi and everything. And then I started submitting stuff to his website, and he would just publish it. He didn't, as long as it was coherent, he's like, fine, this is good. As long as everybody wants to smash the state, he's inclusive. So, I mean, I've had pushback, but the abortion issue, of course, is one that's probably going to be debated in libertarianism forever. Yeah. And I guess the vegetarian one, especially since Michael Huemer, who wrote one of the best books ever, The Problem of Political Authority, he also promotes veganism, so he gets people to come over to his side every once in a while, and they can, historically, vegans, left vegans have this very kind of have this reputation of being very rude, authoritarian, and sometimes that comes out in the libertarian anarchists as well. So that's it's something to see. It's not something that often happens, but after I had Dr. Baker on, that was I got attacked for that pretty good. So
wow, it's always the abortion thing I would expect, of course, and it's funny, these other topics that I wouldn't think necessarily would get a lot of hate thrown your way or my way. And I did one with Stefan Kinsella recently on intellectual property. And I got so much pushback and messages that, boy, he makes some people mad. And I didn't expect that either. It's like we talk about all these serious issues, and IP is serious, but I almost thought, I'm going into this, I want to talk to Stefan. I love his take on stuff. And this is a little bit of a nerdy niche. I get it. And then all of a sudden, wow.
Well, that's another subject that libertarians freak out over. And I've even seen anarchists freak out over it. And I'm like, if you're an anarchist and you're advocating, I mean, how are you going to enforce IP?
Right.
How are you going to enforce patents? Are you going to, what are you going to call the police? Are you going to call your private police force because somebody copied? It didn't steal from you. They copied something that you did. Now, I mean, I have 2 books out there. If somebody's going to take the books and reprint it and put their name on it and everything, yeah, I think that's a dick move. But I'm not going to call the cops on them.
Right.
I'm not going to call the cops on anyone. It's like I was at work a few months. It was like a month or 2 ago, and this teenage kid, just like sat down on the property and started like playing with a model. And I was like, I went to him. I said, "Dude, you have to leave." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So I went back inside. He didn't leave. I went back out, and I'm like, "Dude, you have to leave. Come on, man." He goes, "Well, why are you being mean to me?" I'm like, "Dude, if I was being mean to you, I'd call the cops,
right,
and they'd probably come here and get violent with you. But I hate the cops, so just do me a favor and leave." And I just badgered him until he left and everything. I think he had there was a learning disability there or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I'm not going to call the cops on some kid who's just hanging out, because I used to do the same thing when I was a kid.
Yep.
Well, how are you going to handle IP and patent? That just doesn't make any sense. If you're if you're a libertarian who still thinks that the state has solutions, sure, you might be down with IP, but I don't see how anybody who calls themselves an anarchist, how are you going to enforce it? You can enforce it with violence? Yeah. Is somebody copying what you've done violence? In that case, Tom Woods can basically initiate violence against us all, because we basically stole what he by starting a podcast, we stole what he did.
Yep. Yeah. Well put. When I started this, I had kind of a list of guests that I thought, man, that would be cool if I could get him on. Tom being one of them. And for me, the whole experience, one of the most rewarding parts of it has been getting to talk with people that you and I probably kind of hold up as heroes of sort, like Lou Rockwell and Jeff Deist and Tom Woods. What's been one of the most rewarding aspects of doing this podcast?
It really is been getting to know these people and becoming friends with them, and being able to spend time in person with them, being able to go to the Mises Institute and, being treated with respect and being treated like, somebody who is not someone walking in off the street, but somebody who actually, is contributing, that they would consider to be a voice. And, I would say, having Jeff Deist on is amazing, because I think Jeff Deist is probably one of the most original thinkers we have.
Yes.
He's completely out of the box.
Yep.
I was trying to explain to somebody on Facebook about how, Jeff Deist explains how even in this status paradigm, if there are certain conditions that fall into place, you could sue a social media platform for a tort claim, because that's something that you could do in libertarianism. You would do in a libertarian society. And Jeff explained it all in an episode that we did together, and it really made a lot of sense to me. And I was trying to explain it to somebody on Facebook the other day, and they were losing their mind. They were just, they can do whatever they want and everything. I'm like, technically, yeah. But, a terms of service agreement is sort of a contract. You're agreeing to something. If they're, and then someone asked me, well, in a libertarian society, what if somebody just changes their terms of service so that they can kick you off? He goes, what are you going to do about that? And I'm like, you just answered your own question.
Yeah.
well, we're not in a libertarian society. And if you don't violate their terms of service and they just throw you off now in this paradigm, if they throw you off because they don't like you and it affects like your income and you can prove it and you can prove you did nothing wrong, yeah, go sue them. Yep. Especially since they're getting taxpayer money.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these are getting taxpayer money. And if they're not getting physically taxpayer money, they're getting tax breaks. So, they're being treated specially, and they're being, and it's already been proven that Google had government money to start their platform, that they've given the government backdoors. Facebook has given the government backdoors. Facebook has taken down accounts on the orders of the U.S. and the Israeli government. Twitter obviously just, remember when Twitter all you had to do was verify who you were, and you could get verified on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And now the only people who get verified on Twitter are like lefties, like the people, the loudmouth kids from friggin' Parkland, who had Twitter accounts one day, and they were normal, stupid Twitter accounts. And then like the next day they were all verified. And this was after they stopped verifying anybody unless they're a leftist.
Right.
Basically, so it's like, I have no problem if somebody's, making a serious amount of income off of Facebook or something like that by advertising on there, and then they kick them off for absolutely nothing. Yeah, I think in a libertarian society, you could bring a tort claim against them. And I think anybody who argues against it is just being way too, you're just being a pure schmuck. And you're not looking at libertarian legal theory, because this has already been written about.
Yeah, that was
libertarians piss me off sometimes, man, because it's like they want to and I used to do this. So this is why I get pissed off so much now, is you want to live in this libertarian bubble where you're acting, where all of your beliefs and everything you do, you have to act like you're living in, Ancapistan right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. I'm not living in Ancapistan right now. I'm getting stolen from all the time. I'm having, when a police officer comes, no, I'm not living in Ancapistan right now. So I'm going to have opinions about how to work things. It's like the whole decentralization and secession. There are libertarians out there who are like, and ANCAPs and anarchists who are like, oh, if you're for that, you're just trading a bigger slave master for a smaller slave master. I'm like, yeah, and that smaller slave master might live two doors down from me.
Right.
And I can go and I have guns.
Yeah.
We can keep. The smaller it gets, the better it gets. Oh, but you're still... Oh, shut the hell up. God damn it, man. You people are so friggin' annoying. Just to live in the bubble. I mean, some of those Facebook pages, I'm sure you've been on some of them, where it's like, if you say anything nice about Hoppe,
oh yeah,
I don't care what it is. It's like I did an episode with Per Bieland, and we just basically dismantled Hoppe's net taxpayer argument, where, public property is sort of being held in escrow and we have a right to that. And we just dismantled that. But it's not like, Per is a professor an associate professor at Oklahoma State University. He may not like that argument of Hoppe's, but he assigns his students other teachings by Hoppe.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't you just take the good with the bad?
Right.
Well, because a lot of libertarians have turned into virtue signaling leftists.
Yes.
Oh, that person said so. It's like the whole thing about the Reason crowd and the Cato crowd. Whenever you bring up Murray Rothbard or something, it's like, oh, didn't he say something nice about David Duke once?
Yeah.
Or if you bring up Ron Paul, oh, the newsletters. It's like, you're like a leftist. It's like Michael Malice was on Dave Rubin's show recently, and he was talking about the press and how the left press will say stuff like, Dave Rubin, who caters to a lot of Nazi and far right sympathetic people, and then that's how they frame it, instead of saying Dave Rubin, who is a very popular podcaster and gets hundreds of thousands of downloads. He interviewed this person today. Well, libertarians do the same friggin' thing when you bring up Ron Paul, and they go, "Oh yeah, the newsletters. Oh, the Ron Paul survival report. Oh, the Rothbard Rockwell." It's like, are you? What's wrong with you?
Right.
You can't take the good with the bad. I mean, that's what I do when I read status stuff.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I take the good and I leave the bad. But because they're calling themselves a libertarian, you're not allowed to do that? Shut up.
Yeah. I had pushback from, I had a fellow named Joe Biggs on, and it was an anti-Antifa episode, and he's kind of become famous for fighting them in the streets or whatever, and organizing all these rallies against Antifa. And I had pushback. People messaged me saying, "You realize he's friendly with the Proud Boys, right? So you're going to give this guy a platform, and it kind of makes you look like you're a Proud Boy or you're friendly with him." And I'm like, because I had him on my podcast to talk about a mutual hatred for Antifa, I don't understand the connection past that. I mean, I've had Megan Murphy, a famous progressive feminist, and I didn't get any pushback. Oh my God, you had a leftist on your show. That means you think the same way they do. It's funny how it's just the people that tend to be a little bit more towards the right. If you give them a platform, that's where you get the pushback from.
Well, that's because these people want to be accepted by the left.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not going to.
Right.
I'm sorry. As long as your economics is free market, you're not going to be accepted by these people unless they somehow open their eyes about economics. And I mean, I think it can happen. I talk to people all the time who came from the left. You know, I think most libertarians come from the right, but there's a hell of a lot that come from the left. You know, and I think the ones that come from the left are actually a lot better at this and can become more on fire for liberty than a lot of the ones that come from the right. Because I think a lot of the ones that come from the right still carry a lot of the baggage of the right. But the ones that come from the left, people like Dave Smith and stuff like that, they really, they understand that economics is like the most important thing. I think Jeff Dice said it on your show and probably said it on Dave's and probably said it on mine. He said, if you see a libertarian who's really bad on libertarianism, they're ignorant of economics.
Yes, that's right.
Because economics is the base. It's the base of everything. It's how we interact with each other. If you understand basic economics, you can understand how to interact with another human being. And it doesn't have to be like you're trading. It's just talking. You can understand how to trade ideas. But, I mean, people just love they get in these little groups and everything, and I guess I do it too, because I associate with the Mises crowd more than I do and everybody else. So whenever somebody comes after somebody from the Mises Institute, I guess I take it a little personally, especially since I know most of them. And, but yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're going to be okay, I've had leftists on. I had known Chomsky's daughter on, and she is just completely down the line, the socialist. Nobody had any problems with that.
Right.
They had a couple problems with the things that she said about Central America and, wanted to argue those points. But nobody was upset that I had a freaking socialist on, whose dad was, is one of the most famous, I would guess, anarcho-syndicalist ever, or maybe the most famous anarcho-syndicalist ever. I mean, if I had Noam on, would people be upset? You shouldn't be talking to leftists. It's like, no, but if I had, the people who would, like, if I had Richard Spencer on,
oh man,
the same people who would be pissed off about me having Richard Spencer on would not be pissed off about me having Noam Chomsky on, or me even having any kind of radical NCOM or something like that. They wouldn't be pissed off. They'd be like, oh, it's good that you're talking to those people. But you're not allowed to talk to those other people.
That's right.
Because, we're the libertarian police here.
And you certainly can't call them great, apparently.
Yeah. And what's funny is, people don't even realize when they're being trolled, because these people have no sense of humor.
Yeah. I don't really love this term, but everyone does know what it means. So I guess I can't ask this any other way. Can you talk about your libertarian journey and kind of how and where that started?
Oh, I mean, it started when I was a kid. I mean, I always hated the cops. I guess that would probably be the easiest thing to point out, was just growing up in New York City. I just had a profound hatred for the police because I saw them for how corrupt they were from the start. And my parents would warn me against getting into confrontations with the police because they knew exactly, what kind of people they are, what kind of organization that is. So, but, when I was probably in my 20s, I was not political at all. I had some ideas about, I was probably would look at the culture and worry and just go, why do people think this? Why do people think that? But I saw politics as just a joke, as not useful. 9/11, I think, made a lot of people. Maybe I lived down in South Florida when the 2000 election happened and the whole West Palm Beach debacle of the votes and everything. And that made me initially want to choose one side over the other. But then I was just like, this is really ridiculous. I mean, if they can't get their voting right, what good are they? And everything. And then, then 10 months later, 11 months later, 9/11 happens. And I had a strong opinion for about a week. And then I was really upset for about a week. And then I just pretty much retreated into, it seems like the United States government's going to have to do something. So I'm assuming they're going to go to war somewhere. And then when I saw that they went to war with Afghanistan, even though they had announced where most of the attackers came from, that made no sense to me. I thought if you're going to attack anybody, you attack Saudi Arabia. But then as time goes by, I learn more about Saudi Arabia and the United States, and I'm like, oh, well, I see that. I see why they're not attacking them. And then the invasion of Iraq, I mean, I was just like, this is ridiculous because I'd listened to the build up to it and everything. It seemed to me from all the information I was getting that they didn't have any WMDs. And if they did have chemical weapons, they were chemical weapons that they got from the United States during the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, which turned out to be people who I was reading at the time were right on that. But I still couldn't get I still had the cognitive dissonance of, if you're going to war, we got to support the troops and everything. And I didn't break out of that until 2007 when Ron Paul was running for president, and I saw him on the debate stage, and he said, "Hey, they hate us because we're over there and everything." And then I remembered some stuff that right after 9/11, guy I was working with was telling me about Osama bin Laden and how this had all started with the Mujahideen and everything. And I was like, oh, I guess this makes a lot of sense that he mess around. If someone was messing around in our neighborhood, we wouldn't like them much.
Right.
And so then I was just off from, Ron Paul brought me over to libertarianism, started calling myself a libertarian, started reading a lot. And, then in the early 2010s, I would say 2011 to 2016, I was pretty much doing my own thing and studying on my own, but not studying libertarianism all the time. I was studying a lot of comparative religion, world religion stuff, working on myself. And then 2016 rolled around, and I just saw the absolute clown show that Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump was going to be. And I was like, maybe I better, maybe I'll go on social media and start commenting on it and seeing if anybody likes my thoughts on it. And started making some memes, and it was about, did that for a while, started building up a pretty good following on Twitter, and then started the podcast about a year later. Here, 376 episodes later, and people are asking me to come on their show, and they really want to hear what I have to say. And
isn't that cool?
Yeah, kind of weird.
Yeah. When you first joined the LP, was that kind of that initial push with Tom Woods and all that? Is that when you first actually joined them?
No, I joined the LP the first time in 2010.
Okay.
And I think the only reason I joined the LP at that time was because John Mons was running for governor here in Georgia. And I had thought about voting for him. So I joined the LP. I actually went to an event with him and met him. And I just met him recently at the LP Georgia convention. And he's actually thrown his hat in the ring for running for president this time around. I think he might be a little too late to the party, but we'll see. He's a great voice and a really good thinker. But then it ended up that in 2010, when I joined the LP, like 3 months later, I just had decided completely to drop out of politics and voting and everything whatsoever. So, I just let my membership lapse. Okay. And what's funny is when I rejoined the LP back at the time when Smith and Woods and everybody were joining it, that I actually got my card in the mail and it said member since 2010.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, okay, well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing happened I've said this a few times. I got to give you credit and Joshua Smith for convincing me, shaming me, Pete, into getting back into the LP. And I am all in. I've got my own link now to sign up, and I'm going to be a delegate. I'm aiming to be a delegate. I want to get.
I already am.
Yeah. So we have.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Y'all selected yours?
I was selected as a delegate. We had, when we did the convention here, I think you had 28 delegates, and I think we got 11 or 12 from the Mises Caucus out of the 28 here that are going to Austin.
Yes, excellent. Then ours, the delegate process happens sometime in March. I've got it on my calendar, so I'm aiming to be one, and I want, like I believe, like yourself, Joshua Smith and Hornberger here, as to basically represent the party. And so, thanks for the push, the final push to rejoin. And I got the card and it said member since 2001. And I kind of thought, funny, I guess they don't count the year or two when I wasn't a member. But what inspired you to jump back in?
Well, the idea that the word libertarian is always going to be attached to even anarcho-capitalism or whatever. And the fact that the Libertarian Party had just really become a joke. And, Gary Johnson, although he wouldn't be my first pick and everything, he was fine. But the whole Build Weld thing was fine. But then really when I became familiar with the personality of Nicholas Sarwark, mm-hmm. I decided that I wanted to jump in, and that really the LP can be used for education, can be used for decentralization and secession at the local level. And, I've written articles about that and had people in the LP, not Nicholas Sarwark, but people who with positions in the national LP say that my articles on secession were, right on and everything. And that was encouraging to me. So, I don't see, I'm not, I don't believe there'll ever be a Libertarian Party president. To me, the Libertarian Party is about getting people, getting a message out there nationally. So getting someone like a Jacob Hornberger out there to preach the message of liberty and to work at the local level, because I think that things have to be done at the local level. I'm not one of these people who thinks we're just going to wait around and everything's going to collapse and then we're going to have libertarianism and we're going to have a libertarian society. No, it's the same reason why I think the Boogaloo, especially in Virginia, is a ridiculous idea. If they come for you and they want to do violence, sure, you protect yourself. But what are they going to do? Are they going to take over the government of Virginia? Or are they going to all be ANCAPs?
Right.
Is that what you're going to institute an ANCAP government in Virginia? Or is it just going to be a bunch of NRA, GOA loving conservatives who still think, I like my AR-15, but no one should own a machine gun. Mm-hmm. No one should have a sawed-off shotgun. No one needs that kind of stuff. It's just going to be a bunch of FUDs. So, it's I think that, you really, and Hoppe talked about this, and I talked about this with Michael Bolden when I had him on recently, is Hoppe talked about doing stuff locally, going to town hall meetings and going, hey, how about we get rid of the public schools here? Mm-hmm. How about we take the money that we get for public schools and put them into private schools? And let's start with that. How about we do that? But and then Hoppe talks about, he talks how much he loves Liechtenstein and how Europe should be, 10,000 Liechtensteins.
Yes.
But there are so many ANCAPs who'll be like, but you're still going to have a government, and they'll still, okay, sure. But I mean, Liechtenstein and places like Luxembourg or even Switzerland with their welfare state. I mean, I've talked to a listener on my podcast who lives in Switzerland, and he loves it there. He's like, it's so much more liberty here. He's like, luckily he had a company there who sponsored him to come in. And he's like, I'm never leaving. He goes, this is the closest thing I've ever had to liberty. Or, I was talking to Ryan Dawson the other day, and he lives in Japan. And he moved to Japan in 2004. And he's like, it's not Ancapistan. He goes, but the people here are nice. The culture is completely different. It's not a warring, I have a tendency to believe that the reason the culture, there's so much violence and there's so much theft and there's so much just hatred is because that's what the government is.
Yeah.
It's the biggest warring government of all time. If you're growing up and you're taught in a 15,000 hour indoctrination center that the government is your daddy, well, you look to your daddy. Well, how does your daddy handle conflict? Oh, he kills people. Oh, okay. So that's how we do it. But in Japan, they're not a warring country anymore. They're about commerce, and they're about their own culture and everything. And it's like Dawson said, a lot of people will talk about, oh, well, it's just so homogenous and everything. He's like, it's not even that. It's just the culture. He goes, it's just the way people are. He talks about leaving one of his notebooks in a train station and going back 2 hours later, and it was there, and doing the same thing with a phone.
Yeah.
It's just it's just something completely different. But so getting back to secession and everything, and I'm going to talk to Ryan McMakin later today after I get back from an appointment, and we're going to talk about his 2 latest articles that have everybody butthurt.
Boy, it did.
I mean, these people have lost their minds. They cannot read an argument. They cannot read an article. They see one word, and that's it. Their decision is made, and they can't read the article, and get what he's saying in there. I mean, it's basically an anti-federalism article.
Yep.
And then he followed it up with another article about how smaller states tend to be richer and tend to be safer.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, not in Africa. It's like, well, what are you talking? You want to talk about Africa? How basically the West has done everything it can to keep Africa poor, and actively does that. You want to talk about how Facebook wanted to put a satellite up to bring Facebook to sub-Saharan Africa, and the satellite blew up on the launch pad? I mean, now we're getting into conspiracy theory territory, but what does Facebook do? It creates algorithms so that people can market to other people. So it's, I mean, I cannot believe the reaction to somebody talking about making the state smaller.
Yeah.
And how smaller states are richer and usually safer. And the libertarian purists just blow up. The anarchist purists just blow up. Well, what do you think? I mean, I love the collapsitarians, but if everything collapsed, we're not going to be living in a safer environment.
Right.
I mean, we might. I mean, possibly, but it's going to be a hell of a lot of work. And I don't think it's going to collapse anyway, because say the dollar collapsed tomorrow, they have something already planned to replace it, and people are going to happily eat it up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if people think it's a conspiracy theory that they don't have currency to replace the dollar if the dollar collapsed tomorrow, then you're just not thinking.
I think you said it well when you said, speaking on the McMakin article, it's just one word. It must be a word or something in that headline that people saw, because I would call him a kind of middle of the road, left-leaning libertarian friend of mine, tag me or write me and say, could you believe this guy I hope he's an outlier, because this is ridiculous. And I wrote him privately as to avoid being, mean on comments. And I said, did you read that article? And he says, which one? And to phrase it in a way I thought would be friendlier to his ears, I said, the one on local control versus empire. And he said, let me reread it. And it's funny, I guess the word immigration thrown in there or borders thrown in there threw some people for a loop is all I can figure, because I thought, why would you be against this article? It's very well written, and I don't see as a libertarian how it wouldn't make sense to you. Local control, you let the states figure out what they need to do. And if, California wants to have open borders and Arizona doesn't want to, well, fine.
Well, and here's the other thing is I've been saying this for probably like ever since they started making the argument of, well, if you have open borders, open international borders, people are going to walk over and they're going to vote blue and they'll just basically turn the whole country blue. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But what's even worse is flight from California and Illinois and New York. All these people living. And I've actually I've said this, and I'm sort of being hyperbolic, that build a wall around California.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you're worried about, then you should worry. You're going to have more people. If people do that, you're going to get more of them. And also the argument Bob Murphy makes, go to a one baby policy, because the chances that the children that are being born now are probably going to be more brought up, especially going through government schools. They're going to be brought up to be leftists is a lot more likely than the strict Catholics coming from Central America are going to be, vote left.
Yeah.
I mean, so why don't you start building borders around the states? I've been saying that. That's why when I read the article, when I saw the title of the article, I laughed, because it's like, I've been saying that.
Yeah.
I've been saying, well, if this is your worry, here's your answer. And people forget that McMakin, I had him on, what was this? Back in July. And we talked about the immigration issue, the international immigration issue. And what we came to was the easiest thing is, and what we both endorsed was, people coming from south of the border, they sign something when they come in saying they won't accept welfare or any kind of, that they can't accept anything that's publicly funded, and fine, and then come in.
Right.
And we even talked about, and people will argue, shouldn't they be tested for disease and everything? And he made the statement, he said, well, isn't that invasive? I mean, think about it. You're talking about now you're going to be drawing blood, and you're going to be. And he said that's kind of invasive, And I mean, I know it was done at Ellis Island. My mother's side of the family came through Ellis Island and everything, but that doesn't mean it was right.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, so his idea, McMakin's idea of international borders, especially with the southern border of the United States, is just make sure they know, hey, unless you have this kind of identification, you can't get public funding. You're here to work. Oh, does that sound like a Nazi? Does that sound like someone who wants to build walls? And then he writes an article where he puts border and immigration in there, talking about the 50 states, which is clearly an article about how federalism just completely destroys our rights.
Yeah.
And people don't get it because all they see is border and immigration.
Yeah.
Or they have this pure, and this is the reason why this pisses me off more than anything. I used to be this way. I used to be that pure, ANCAP who couldn't argue in the real world. Well, I'm sorry. I'm living in the real world. I'm dealing with the real world every day, and from what I see, when I look around the world, especially in the West, the smaller countries have a tendency to be more classically liberal, or Mises' idea of liberalism.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's like, why wouldn't I endorse that? Why wouldn't you want things to get smaller? I mean, do you really think? I mean, look at something like upstate New York. Once you get outside of New York City, you are basically in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's funny is it looks like the South, because I'm here in Georgia and I go into North Georgia, into the mountains, and it looks just like Northern New York. And it's like, don't you think a lot of those people in Northern New York would love to secede from New York City, where they can have guns? I mean, those people love to have guns. They love guns as much as people in the South. Well, why would that be a bad thing? because then their government could be tyrannical. Well, they're on a tyrannical government now anyway.
Yeah.
So, Jesus Christ, man.
Yes, I feel your frustration. I love it. I got to ask you before we get out of here about the documentary that you're working on. Can you please talk about that?
Oh man. Yeah, it's coming and it's going to be here soon. I have to give it to, there's three of us. Stateless Productions is myself, Robert Rex, and Chris Kofer. And Chris has done so much amazing work on this. I mean, he's the one who went through all of the interviews and laid out the whole script and laid out the whole documentary and then said, hey, we need narration for this and everything. So we all went to work on narrating, so what the things a narrator is going to say and how it's going to put together, how it'll be put together. And so look for duplications in, David Gordon might have said something that the same as Peter Klein, and Jeff Dice said the same thing as Ryan McMakin, and Thaddeus Russell said the same thing as James Scott. So we have all that down. We have someone working on animation now. We saw the first piece of animation, and it came out great. Original animation that we're going to have Thomas Kay, who has done some amazing animation, famously George Ought to Help, one of the best animations out there on using Michael Huemer's work of The Problem of Political Authority. He's going to allow us to use all of the animation he has. So it's like anything that we see, we can throw in there and use. So that's going to be a big help. But then we have a professional musician who's going to work on the score, which comes last, and that's going to be awesome. But this is coming together rather quickly, and I really have to give it to Chris because Chris has he's done a lot of the heavy lifting here, and it's going to be fascinating. It's not going to be a lot. I think it's going to be different than a lot of people think. There's going to be a lot of anthropology, the history of states, nation states, how they got there. We're going to talk about the idea of the modern nation state. And I think people are going to be very surprised at how late we think the actual modern nation state, what we would call the modern nation state, came into being, and what James Scott especially concludes is the one unifying factor that defines what a state is. And then, we'll go through that. We'll talk about education outside of the state. We'll talk about all the Federal Reserve, of course, money, and a libertarian society. What is libertarian society would be like from all these great people, especially a lot of the Mises Institute crowd. And I'm sure that's going to upset so many libertarians.
Oh, of course.
But I think it's going to be amazing. I see the script, so I know that it's going to be amazing right now. Now it's just a matter of putting it together, getting the narration done. But we should have that. I'm thinking it's going to be done by the time the LP National Convention comes around.
Oh,
and
excellent!
It'll be amazing to have that out at that same time.
Yeah.
But it's a hell of a lot more work than I thought it was going to be, man. When I first got approached with this,
I can only imagine. Do you guys have a name for it?
Yeah, it's called The Monopoly on Violence.
Excellent. Okay. How much of your time has this taken up? I can only imagine, because the podcast alone, I know myself doing this, and you put out 3 a week. I think that has to take up a lot of your time. And now this documentary on top of it.
Luckily, we have a pretty good crew. I haven't had to devote an insane amount of time to it. I haven't had to lose any sleep, put it that way, because other people are there to do it. I also have a lot of free time when I do go to my day job.
Oh, good. Okay.
So that I can work on stuff like that. Also I'm the managing editor at Libertarian Institute, which takes up some time. And and the 3 podcasts a week. That's why I like to get a bunch in the can so that I can.
Yep.
It's to me, the documentary is really going to be our legacy. So that's what's most important to me right now. I mean, I'm writing another book. I actually was writing another book through the summer. started writing another book through the summer, and I had to put it on the back burner. And I'm looking forward to the documentary coming out so that I can get back to this book, which is really a labor of love. And the Libertarian Institute, as long as it's up to our standards, we can put that out under the Libertarian Institute banner, like all the great books that we have out now. Fool's Errand by Scott Horton, The Great Ron Paul, Scott Horton, Coming to Palestine by Sheldon Richman, which is an amazing book on Israel-Palestine. And of course, the Will Grigg book, No Quarter, which is just the greatest articles that Will Grigg ever did. And that just means all of them, because he never wrote an article that wasn't great. So
what's your book going to be over?
It's going to be on Waco. It's going to be on
excellent.
the Waco massacre.
How cool.
So, so I'm going to basically attack it from what happened, all the accusations, all the stuff that the press put out there that is just absolutely wrong. All the stuff that is just, just flat out lies that they put out there. So I'm going to go over those, and I'm going to disprove all the lies. And then I'm going to get into exactly what happened during the 51-day siege, what happened on day 51, April 19th, 1993. I will prove that it was the government that set that fire, and it wasn't the Branch Davidians who did it. And if the Branch Davidians did it, they didn't do it on purpose. They would have done it fighting back against tanks being rolled into their building, into their home. And then I'll finish it off with an essay on what I think are, how a libertarian should look at this situation, and do a commentary on it and see how long that goes, because I want to keep all of my points that I make throughout the book article length. So like 1,000 to 1,500 words on each thing, so that people will be tempted to read it, instead of some of the books that are out there by Waco, which are over 20 years old now and are, most of them are really long. I just want to get to the point and make the point, and then save my commentary on it for the end. So I think I can have that out this year, but it's just a matter of getting the documentary done, because I've already said that I'm not going to work any further on that until the documentary gets done, because I think the documentary in the end will be more important than that book.
Okay. Well, is there a spot where people can go, if you guys still need it, to contribute to funding for the documentary?
Yeah, there's an Indiegogo page. If you type in the Monopoly on Violence, it'll come up. We're still taking donations, even though we reached our goal. I think we put it out there for 60 or 90 days, and we had our goal within like 17 or 18 days. People were really excited about this. And, we got over, we were thinking we could do it for $15,000, which was shoestring. We got an extra 10, and then we realized, well, thank you for the extra 10, because there's no way we would have been able to do it without the extra 10. But anything, that to put forward, anything anybody wants to donate now will be used, because it turns out that 15, we thought 15 would be a shoestring, and then what we have is a shoestring. I mean, we're not going to have anything left over at the end of this. I mean, everything's going to go into, especially the printing of DVDs for the people who, we did at different levels. 15, you get a digital download. $30, you get a DVD, and then had $100 and $500 levels where you're still going to get a DVD. So we have to have, Blu-ray. So we'll have Blu-ray, and the great thing about the Blu-ray is everything that we're not using in the documentary, all the footage we shot, will be included in the Blu-ray.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So like all that extra footage of, just stuff that we had to cut for time constraints, or we had a whole subject in there that we were going to use that we actually just decided this subject seems like a non sequitur. So we're taking it all out, but we'll include it in the Blu-ray.
Excellent. All right. Also, before we get you out of here, just go ahead and give them all the stuff they need to know, where they can find you online and your podcast and everything.
If you want to hear the podcast, go to any podcatcher, Free Man Beyond the Wall. You'll find it. 376th episode released today. You can go to, if you want to read stuff that I've written, you can go to libertarianinstitute.org /Mance. And then, everything will come up there. My episodes, all my podcast episodes, but articles that I've written, especially over the last 6 months, I've put out a lot. and Monopoly on Violence on Indiegogo. You can go check that out. And I think that's about it. I'm sure there's something.
You allowed back on Twitter now?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. It's my full name, Peter R. Quinones. And also, I do have a Patreon page, and it's patreon.com/ManceRaider. And so you can check that out. And on my website, freemanbeyondthewall.com, there's a store page, and you can support me like on Patreon, but you can actually do it for the year, and you can do it in cryptocurrency as well as fiat. So, yeah, if you want to support what I'm doing,
excellent.
That'd be helpful too.
I will link to all of that, of course. Pete Quinones, Mance Raider, Free Man Beyond the Wall. Thank you so much for being here on Death to Tyrants.
Thanks, Buck. It was great.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the chat there with Pete Quinones. And like we talked about in it, we both joined the Libertarian Party now, and there's a giant push from within to make the LP libertarian again. And if you would like to help us do that, you can join at my link at lp.org/Death to Tyrants. Come on, join us. It's going to be fun here in Austin in a few months when we have this big convention and we get Jacob Hornberger elected as our presidential candidate, and we get Josh Smith elected as the new chair of the Libertarian Party. So go do that. Join us, man. Also, you can find me online. You guys know this, facebook.com/Death to Tyrants podcast. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And of course, if you so choose, you can donate to this show. Every last penny I get from that will go straight to this show, I promise. And that's over at patreon.com/Death to Tyrants. Until next week, you guys, have a great one. We'll talk to you soon.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Death to Tyrants podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.